Okay, so I reckon we're going to be around 2 hours today, but obviously you're welcome to, here's your friend Martin, I'll just let her in. Welcome to drop out if you want. And as I say, I am recording it, so if you do have to go for any reason, I can always send you the recording of it as well. And I don't know if you all got my email message about Dream Tea, but if anyone wants a sample of Dream Tea, I will send them a sample in the post so you can try it for yourself and incorporate that into your dream ritual. So we've got about 11 people in, and we're going to be discussing water features in dreams and how water works in the dream state. And basically my aim for today is to essentially program you to dream about water this evening, and in doing so hopefully alert your subconscious mind to the fact that you're dreaming, and you'll remember that we talked about water, and hopefully in your dream state you'll be able to go, oh, why am I dreaming about so much water? That will be because I've been doing this this dream workshop. So we're going to do a few things, and some of them might seem a bit weird and unrelated to dreaming, but it's all part of my programming program. So we're going to be doing some wordplay, because one of the things I've really discovered about dreams is that they have a kind of feedback system with the words that you experience during the day. And actually what you often find in dreams is there's loads of punning and wordplay, and punning and wordplay was especially important in ancient Egyptian dream interpretation, and it's still totally relevant today. So I'll give you a little example. I was trying to think of an example before I came on, but say for example there might be someone in your life called Tony, and in your dream you dream about falling over and hurting your toe and your knee, and you may not think that that relates to the person, but if you write that down, you might recognize that when you write it down, that it has something to do with a person called Tony. So there's all that kind of stuff in dreams quite a lot. And one of the things I've recognized in my own life about dreaming and periods of loads and loads of lucid dreaming seem to correspond to me with whenever I play a lot of Scrabble. And I've come to the conclusion that the kind of wordplay that you do when you play Scrabble, and you know when you play Scrabble, I don't know, are there any Scrabble fans here? I'm like quite big into Scrabble. So you know when you have all your tiles on your little shelf, and you have this feeling that you know there's a word there, but before you've actually worked out what the word is, you get this sort of feeling, and it's almost like deja vu, and it's this perhaps subliminal knowledge of what the word is, but your conscious mind hasn't like fully registered it yet. So we're going to be doing some anagram work as well to try to get you to think in those terms and see if you can work out some of the stuff as well. So what you need is paper and writing materials. I've got some pencils because we're going to be doing some drawing as well. And the reason why I did this workshop is my kind of take on lucid dreaming, I suppose, is a little bit different perhaps to a lot of other people that teach lucid dreaming. It's all about working with your memory and trying to integrate your subconscious experience in the dream realms, if you like, and the conscious experience of your everyday waking reality. So one of the things I used to do as a kid is I used to dream of going to the same place every night. And the conclusion that I came to as I grew up and this place kind of expanded and developed, and there were new things popping up, new buildings, new features, new landscape aspects to it, was that in my dream world, I'm kind of creating this psychic architecture. So I do remember really, really early dreams from when I was a toddler, I'm guessing, that were all white. And then as I watched lots of TV and saw lots of things in my life, that space got filled in. But I really remember those early dreams of just being pure white, and then it almost filling in like a TV studio. And I tell people this a lot, but the first dream I ever vividly remember is being in this white room that had acquired red shelves by this point, and there being a yellow rubber duck on these red shelves, and then my Fisher-Price toy phone ringing and me answering it, and it was Wurzel Gummidge telling me he'd killed my nan. And that was the first dream that I remember. And then throughout the years, lots of stuff got filled in, so that babies spend an incredible amount of time in REM sleep, like much, much longer than we do. And I think they're actually building their personality in that sleep state. And that's what, and also they're learning language at this time. They're incredible at picking up language. And I think that this integration of language in the dream state is really important. So we're going to be working with that a little bit. So when I was a kid, I used to draw maps of the places that I went to. And I think in doing that, I created this feedback system between my drawing and my creative output, I suppose, because all of my creativity and my ideas came from the things that I saw in my dreams. So I draw them down, and then I kind of consolidated that dream space in my conscious waking life. And I was able to return over and over again to this dream map place. And even now, I still go to the same places quite a lot. And it helps me to become lucid, because if I'm somewhere where I recognize as being my dream place, I'm like, oh, this is my dream place, and it makes me wake up in the dream. So that's what it's all about. It's about kind of, for me, lucidity, people often give quite long explanations about what lucidity is. But to me, lucidity is about when you're in a dream, you're able to remember who and where you are. And in that moment, you are lucid. That's what it's all about. And lucidity can have varying degrees of intensity. You can have an incredible, like, full body bliss state when you become lucid quite often, and you can exercise complete incredible control over your dream as well. But other people can be fully lucid but not able to change what happens in their dream at all. So I thought, first of all, perhaps we could do some introductions of everyone and just maybe say what you want to get out of dreaming, perhaps what your dreaming experience is, and why you've decided to come to a workshop. So Gwyn, can we start with you?
Okay, sure. I lucid dream. I lucid dream and can take notes and come back with information. And it's kind of just something that the family knows. My mom has done it a couple of times where she's called me in the middle of the night and said, whatever it is you're doing in your dream, I need you to stop right now. And I've done the same thing to her. I once walked into their room and they were asleep and like nothing was going on. And I told them they both had to wake up instantly because I didn't like where their dreams were going. And they were to stop it immediately.
Wow.
So I went through a phase of sleepwalking. And none of my family are like, I can pick up the phone and my mother will be there without ringing the phone. So great deal of energy. And so my dreams are just an extension of everything else I'm doing. So I have done some very nice, calming, spiritual activities in a lucid dream. I've come back with mental images emblazoned. But gradually, once I'm finding them, I'm able to piece them out. I'm challenged with building because I don't really know how many rooms mine has, but I've never gone to the same one. And it always seems to be, up a little hole or whatever. And I haven't felt comfortable trying to experience that with anybody else, just in case I needed help.
Okay, great. I think that's a really important thing that you just brought up there about bringing back images from your dreams. And I think this is something that can really help you remember your dreams. I remember a dream I had as a teenager of one of the things I wanted to say, actually, one of the things I notice in dreams, and I've been talking to people about this recently on forums, is that things are usually kind of enlarged in the dream state, especially birds and insects. And this is something I really noticed from my own dreams, and it's something that's going to accompany the water theme, because when you do dream about these watery scenes or these watery features, there's often creatures that live in the water there, and they're often bigger than they would be in real life. So I see a lot of wading birds and salamanders and frogs and fish, and they're usually normally kind of toddler size, and it's almost like because your vision is so much more sharper in the dream state, or it seems to be at least, that instead of you being able to see 2020, it's almost like the object itself becomes bigger so you can see it more closer up, if you get my drift. So there are little things like this which you need to be mindful of when you start dreaming, so that those kind of things are the things that alert you to the fact that you must be dreaming. So we're going to be talking about this all the time. Yes, Quinn?
I'm wind. Whenever I can, for some reason, be able to just feel wind or hear the sound, then that puts me in one. So I'm frequently in a hot air balloon, on one of those, random things that's just hovering out in space. So it seems a little futuristic, but it's still my comfortable. I seem to be up high a great deal.
Okay, great. Does anyone else want to share something about what they're hoping to get out of today, or why they came along? Myra?
Hi, yeah, good to see everyone. And thanks for sharing that, Gwyn. That was fascinating to hear. I've been lucid dreaming on and off since I was a kid, and sort of had different periods in my adult life where I've focused on that more or less. I'd say in the last few years I've been working with dreams a lot, but not really focusing on lucidity. I think lucidity is something that comes in and out and is sometimes an effect of the other ways that I'm working on the dreams. So I really related to what you were saying about that more kind of holistic coming in and out, reflections from the dreams, reflections from waking life stuff, Sarah Jane. I've been part of a dream sharing group now for a couple of years that started on one project that we were doing together, and the exact people who are in it come in and out a bit, but there's a core group of us that have been continuously coming back to it now for about 2 years. And observing that has been so fascinating. The ways that our dreams will sync up and come out of sync, the times when we all dreamt that we were together somewhere and it won't be exactly the same, but the parallels in theme, exactly that kind of punny stuff you were talking about, Sarah Jane, or like it'll have a similar energy, but be in very different locations. I think I'm here today because I'm really fascinated by dream locations, dream mapping, and exactly the kind of coming in and out, reflecting back and forth thing that you were just talking about. I've heard that thing about building dream territories as children in other places before. I definitely resonate with that as well. There are locations that I go back to really frequently that I remember when in my childhood they kind of first appeared. I think it's just it's a fascinating process, and it's integral to pretty much everything I do these days as well, I think.
Excellent. You reminded me of like dream locations as well, and talking about puns, is when I was a kid I used to listen to the Velvet Underground all the time, and I had a actual Velvet Underground as one of my dream locations, and I never put the two together until I wrote Velvet Underground, or like it was like an underground shopping mall, and when I wrote that it was all decorated in velvet, I was like, oh yeah, that's where I got that from.
I love that. That's so I made whole I was one of those kids who made vast imaginary worlds with my twin sister when I was a little kid, and very, very similar in terms of that. Like, even though we made them in waking play life, although I'm sure we'd go there in dreams as well, but it was you look at it as an adult and you're like, oh, I obviously got that from that and that from that.
I think that imagination is hugely underrated and has a lot to do with it as well. I just did an interview with the director of the Philip K. Dick Festival, and we were talking about the kind of imaginative crazy life that Philip K. Dick had, and I think a lot of it was as a result of him spending so much time writing stories. And actually, if you read novels, you begin to empathize so much with the character that you actually change the neural structure of your brain as a result of inhabiting that character so much, which is another reason why I think actors are so crazy often, because they spend so much time pretending to be someone else, that actually who you are, your personality, is just whatever you do and how you behave. And so you could quite easily change your personality and be someone totally different if you spent long enough acting that way. Okay, Martin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, sorry, just take myself off mute. Yeah, so I met Sarah a few months ago. We've got a mutual friend who is an author, writes a lot about precognition and deja vu and synchronicities and all these weird and wonderful things. And I always had an interest in lucid dreaming and just the dreaming side in general. A lot of what Anthony actually used to write about. I've not really lucid dreamed that much before. I maybe have had it a few times. I've definitely had times where I've realized I was dreaming, but I think I used to suffer quite a lot a while ago. Luckily, it happened for a very long time, but with sleep paralysis. And the way that I'm like digesting the information in my head, I kind of feel like there might be a correlation with sleep paralysis being the moment where you're fighting it and going against it too much and resisting. I kind of have a weird instinct that if you just learn how to work with the energy a little bit more, you might be able to move towards lucid dreaming. So that might be hopefully something to work towards. But I lost, I don't know whether I said to you when we spoke before, so I lost my dad when I was very young. I was only 6, so like not anything really majorly going off track here, but nothing really majorly to miss. But what I remember about that period of being younger was I had a lot of repetitive nightmares, and the dream world during that period felt bizarre, like you were being transported to another realm. And there's something about that period where it was just so much more vivid. And I just think there's a lot to be learned from this sort of stuff, and I'd really like to do more than I've done. I mean, I've journaled a handful of times in my life where I've kind of kept a dream diary, and I found when I did do that last year, I had a lot more moments in my sort of waking life where I felt a lot more awake and alert and connected to everything. So yeah, I've never had a lot of what's been described by some of the other people. I think I've had a recurring train station location in the last few years where I seem to be at this same really similar, like,
yeah, train stations are super common. They seem to be like a big feature of most dream landscapes for people.
It's weirdly familiar every time. I'm like, I remember this now. I've definitely done this before. But I find that the what's it called, the hypnagogic state, the in between being awake and sleep, that period is fascinating to me. I think somebody else was saying before, like when your dreams correlate and match up with what's going on with everything else. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to learning.
Excellent.
Basically.
Sorry, I'm just replying to someone that's supposed to be in here and isn't in here. For some reason, they didn't get the email that I sent out to everyone. Thanks, Martin. Gaynor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, hi, I'm Gaynor. I am actually a hypnotherapist, and I specialize in helping people with sleep.
Excellent.
And so often my clients talk to me about their dreams, and I've always approached things from a very scientific perspective. So I was interested in something that was, to open my mind. And when I saw something, you posted something in Hastings Creatives, I think, email, and I saw the thing about memory palace, and I use one in my conscious world. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'd like to learn more. I don't lucid dream. I've tried to, but I've never ever had any success. And I do have reoccurring themes in my dreams. The obvious one that I think everyone gets is my teeth falling out. And the other one is about airplanes, being on an airplane that's going to and landing in unusual places. And so, but I've never done any dream work before. So I'm looking forward to trying it out.
Yeah, that sounds great. Emrys?
Okay. Hi, I'm Emrys, and can you hear me? Is the speaker working?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, okay, fabulous. It's always a little questionable on Zoom here. So I'm Emrys, and I'm a writer, and I may be the only person in the U.S. I'm not sure, possibly. So I'm very interested in dreaming, dream states. I lucid dreamt since I was a child. I have had sleep paralysis since I was a teenager. And I used to sleepwalk when I was very, very young. And so, but I am very interested in how memory palace might tie into sleeping, and also just the patterns that happen in dreaming.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Alice, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Yeah, I don't really lucid dream at the moment, but I have in the past, like a couple of years ago. But it was mainly through having to do like lots of reality checks throughout the day, and then as soon as I stopped doing them, the dream stopped. So yeah, I'd quite like to get back to it. It'd be nice. But just dreams in general. I love dreams. I'm in a little dream sharing group as well, which is nice.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I've done quite a lot of workshops in person. This is my first one for adults that I've done online, but I did do one for kids. And because I've done quite a lot of workshops for kids in real life, I kind of changed the format with that. So with that, we were designing this fantasy dream theme park. I have a lot of like theme parks and water parks and weird places like that in my dreams. And it was really great because a lot of those kids got back to me and said that they dreamt they went to their dream thing. So I did like a guided meditation with them at the end when they were exploring their designed dream theme park. And I got a message from their mum saying that they dreamt that they actually went there and they really liked it. So I think that the imagination thing and the being creative, like one of my top tips for dreaming is always reading novels or writing stories, because in the process of doing that, you're obviously developing your powers of imagination, and that helps you when it comes to dreaming, of just conjuring up those kind of visualizations is really good. Hugh, I'm really sorry that you didn't get in, but I did send the email. Did you see it at some point? Because I did send it out to everybody.
No, I didn't get an email at all. I looked at my spam and nothing had arrived.
You bought a ticket via Ticket Source, right?
Yes, I did.
Oh, well, I sent it out 3 times today, that same message. But anyway, I've recorded it, so I could send you the first part, the recording of it.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I didn't get anything. I checked my spam and
okay.
It's come through to me, so I don't know quite why that's happened.
Well, we're just introducing ourselves to each other at the moment. So Hugh, why are you interested in dreams, and why did you come along to this workshop?
Basically, because so this last couple of years I started to dream more than I used to, and I wanted to kind of get a bit of understanding, because I always tend to forget them after you wake up in 10-15 minutes and you've forgotten them, but sometimes I feel like there's been a revelation and then you've lost it. And I kind of wanted to find out a bit more about that. I think probably what's instigated that was I gave up alcohol some time ago, and since then I've started to get a lot more vivid dreams overnight.
Yeah. Okay, great. Bridget, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Bridget Ann. I go by BA, don't call me BA. But yeah, I am so happy to be here tonight. It's quite synchronistic. Marty and I kind of just connected on Instagram because of a friend of mine in California, and it was just happenstance. And that group, she's actually part of a group of ladies. We went to uni together to study acting, so I am a little bit of one of those nutty actors. And we have a group of ladies who do like full moon kind of Zoom gathering. And what happened at the last one was a big fire kind of explosion. That was quite, I didn't make it because it was about 2 a.m. here, and I didn't make that one. But this next one coming up, and yesterday I do sea dipping, and I've been in the sea and having quite a lot of water presence. And it was said that, yes, before this next moon, we have to get a lot more water energy and protect ourselves from the fire energy that's there. But dreaming wise, I'm really excited to be here. I've also had a lot of experience with it over my lifetime, but lost connection more recently. I remember my dreams very vividly, but I want to get more connected in terms of what the language is. And I'm fascinated what you were saying, Sarah J, about, the architecture and the puns. I've never really thought about that. So I'm very excited to look into that more. And yeah, I've had similar experiences, like when I was a child, having terrible, frightening, replaying, recurring nightmares. But also wonderful flying, every night I would fly and have the same takeoff, and I can remember it so vividly now. Often have flying dreams. A couple years ago, I died for the first time in my dream, and came back and then had the same path, but made different choices, and died again, and then had the same path and woke up again. I guess it was waking up, it was lucid dreaming, but it was, I wasn't necessarily making the same, I was making different choices, but I wasn't necessarily in charge of that. But it felt like I had options. I had lots of options. So that was really interesting I'd never experienced that before. And acting wise, when I was a little girl, like I had to learn Latin for a play that I was in. I think I was 12. And I apparently was speaking Latin in my dream, and on my knees and doing a rosary. But I had a sock in my hand, but I was using it like a rosary and speaking the Latin. So and then as I've been old, maybe in the last, 7 or 8 years ago, I'm a yoga teacher. So I was leading a yoga retreat in Spain and doing a sound healing. And that's also when the death dream came up also after doing. So I think, a lot about putting intention and spending time to prepare for your dreams makes a big difference. But at that time I was getting messages like, Gwyn, you were saying, you've got to like write down like all this stuff. And I was writing like mad. Like I'd wake up and, I was pretty much up through the night, but I'd have these messages coming through and then writing. And that's what I'm also interested in terms of how much I think I got a bit scared in terms of who to talk about, because as I started mentioning that to others, the reaction wasn't that positive. And I was like, and then the message came in my dream, like, really, this isn't for others. This is for you. So you don't really need to be talking to others about it. But it felt, it feels like very powerful, very exciting. And what else? I just made some notes here. The last thing I guess I want to mention is about what you were saying, Marty, about the hypnagogic state. Because I teach yoga, so I teach people to come into that regularly. And yoga nidra, which is yogic sleep. And I think there's a lot of connections between, but I haven't been teaching that for long, just for the last year really. And super excited to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Mary Beth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. I've been sort of working with my dreams, or playing with my dreams, if you like, for quite a few years now. And I go through periods, I guess, where I remember, and I do sometimes have lucid dreams as well. And I'll remember and they'll be really vivid. And then I'll have periods where it's kind of fallow and they sort of go quiet for a while. But I do have repeating themes, which I find really interesting. And then I'll have like dream versions of like a house from my childhood or something. It's like a little bit different every time, but I recognize it. It's like I'll recognize it as a dream location, if you see what I mean. And it's usually a building rather than an outdoor space. I draw my dreams, I write them. I sometimes sort of do some enacting of them, like photographing myself in various positions in the dream. Like I had a dream recently about someone that I was having a bit of quite a big issue with, and in the dream she was waving at me. So I thought, well, I'm just going to experiment and put myself in that position, and I photographed myself as if I was her, to see what it would be like to kind of relate. And I guess I think I'm here because I want to dive a bit deeper. I want to find other ways of dialoguing and really learning what these messages are, because sometimes they're really, really vivid and fascinating and interesting. And I kind of get so far with because I work as a psychotherapist. I work with dreams with clients as well. And I feel like that the training that I've had in terms of working with dreams can only go so far. It sort of doesn't allow for the multi-layered, there's the psychological, like the mundane sort of daily life stuff. And then I do think there's a spiritual connection. I think there's transpersonal. I think there's, so many layers that they can work on all at once. And so I'm just really interested in different ways, especially, and I think the dream mapping appealed to me because I do work with the arts and creativity and drawing stuff. So that really appeals. So, and I have done one of your other workshops way back, I think it was a year ago. It was in that church in St. Leonard's, and it was really beautiful. It was a dream incubation, and you led us on this most amazing meditation. It really stayed with me. So I wanted to have another experience with you.
Well, we're going to do some sleep hypnosis at the end. And I mean, it's a little bit unfortunate that it's this late, because ideally you should be turning your devices off about now for the night anyway. But my plan with this is, like we did in that church, Mary Beth, it is a kind of incubation thing. And I'm going to send you all a sample of my tea, and then you can practice these things on your own. So this is really kind of practice for it, basically. And like I said before, it's kind of programming and seeding your subconscious with some of these ideas, and hopefully bringing up some of the stuff that you would dream about anyway. Like you were saying, Martin, about train stations. I think the train station thing is a hugely common thing, and I dream about train stations, and there's probably a train station or a boat or some form of transport in every single dream that I have. And sometimes when you wake up, if you just think about these like key things that often feature in your dreams, you can start to recall it a bit more deeply. And if you wake up in the morning and you know that you dream about train stations a lot, you start to think about a train station, and then the memory of the dream will come back. So first of all, water is my favorite dream theme probably. And one of the things I've noticed is that water is in every element of my dreams all the time. It seems to be almost this kind of like fluid of consciousness. And one of the things I've noticed, because I've been interviewed quite a lot recently by various news radio programs and things like that about dreaming because of coronavirus, and we've come up to a whole year now of the coronavirus situation and lockdown, and I almost feel like our bodies are sensitive to these cyclical memories. They're like embedded in our body. There was this shock this same time last year, and it's embodied within us, and so some things are going to be coming out as a result of that. And one of the things I said when I was first interviewed about coronavirus, because people were getting in contact with me from radio stations saying, why is everyone having such weird dreams? And one of the big things with coronavirus is it was an invisible threat. And obviously your mind is very powerful and can create visible things out of an invisible threat like that. And one of the things that happened alongside coronavirus was Tiger King. Tiger King came out when coronavirus first kind of hit our TVs and got into our consciousness. And Tiger King was this kind of parallel, very powerful, primal, tense fear element to it. As it had this kind of like very primal, very powerful animalistic visuals of these huge tigers kept in small cages that were very, very close to ripping someone's throat out at any given moment. And weirdly, a lot of people started to dream about a tiger threat taking place of COVID. So because we can't see COVID, people turned the tigers into the threat that they were afraid of. And one of the other most common dreams during that first period was people were having infestations of insects, feeling that they were covered in ants or small insects or anything small like that. And then the social isolation thing was a big part of it as well. So people were being dreaming that they were being left alone, that they couldn't see people. And I do think it's true that we've, you know, that was a big shock at the time, and we've embodied that somehow. So we're kind of can go through this process to release that kind of trauma, I suppose, for a lot, what would have been trauma for a lot of people. So for me, I have this recurring dream of drinking from the water of life, and I love that dream theme. It's my favorite dream theme ever, and it usually helps me to become lucid because I'm on a quest in my dream to find this either temple, spa, or water fountain or natural spring where I can drink the water of life, and I get to in various stages of sometimes drinking it, sometimes filling the cup, but it's the quest is often about finding this water of life. And one of the things I realized, you know, you were talking about people talking about recurring dreams and nightmares, and the reason why most people learn to become lucid is because they have nightmares when they're a kid. And when they're a kid, they're in this scary situation and they suddenly realize this is very unrealistic, so I must be dreaming. And they either use lucidity, the awareness of being in a dream, to wake themselves up to get out of the scary situation, or to fight or to vanquish their enemy. And so that's how a lot of people start on the journey of lucidity. And I think that that's why children experience more nightmares, generally speaking, and often this is why children have more lucid dreams. But also I think, you know, when kids play, they're almost hallucinating those imaginary scenes that they're seeing when they're in it. I remember being a kid and I used to play this game for hours where I'd pretend I was an Eskimo and my duvet would change from being an igloo to a canoe. And I was really like visually seeing it. It was like overlaid of reality. So, you know, and kids can sit and play with tiny little things and imagine themselves in that tiny little world as well. And, you know, that is great practice. So playing is excellent practice for dreaming. And that's why kids have such great dreams, I think. So my dreams often feature water parks, fountains, rivers and streams. And it may be something that you've not thought about that much, but there probably is some sort of architectural water feature that is fairly common in your dream. A very common dream is tsunamis. Does anyone dream about tsunamis or large waves? Yeah, the tsunamis is, water is often considered to relate to emotion and feeling. And, you know, we talk about being overwhelmed or swept away by emotion. And the tsunami is sometimes that dream that comes to us when we're feeling like a bit overwhelmed with our emotions. But the aspect of water that I really want to explore in this session is its relationship to memory. And water has this deep association with memory and has done since antiquity. And Bridget, you were talking about a kind of, you know, the Eastern traditions in Tibetan dream yoga and in yoga nidra. My specialism really is in the kind of Western esoteric tradition. So my main areas of research are into ancient Greek traditions of dream healing, and a little bit more I'm learning about Egypt and other areas of the Middle East especially. So in the area of Greek sleep therapy, in ancient Greece they had sleep temples all over the Hellenic world, and these were dedicated to the god Asklepios, who is a dream healer god essentially. So these sleep temples perpetuated for over 2,000 years, which makes me think they must have been successful in some way, shape or form. And so you would visit one of these sleep temples, and the idea was that after going through a period of purification, you'd be sent off into this small chamber that was called an abaton, and there you would be kind of prepared for this sacred sleep. And it's worth bearing in mind that it wasn't really like going to bed. It was more like being laid out on a psychiatrist's couch, but sent into hypnosis, so into that hypnagogic state. And then what would have happened is, during that hypnagogic state, you're very suggestible. There might have been a statue of the dream healer god Asklepios in the room with you. And your hypnagogic experience would have been seeded with suggestions from the therapeutai that were there. So it was suggested over and over again that in a divine dream you would meet the God Asklepios, and what would happen in these dreams sometimes is that he would either touch you, and that touch was enough to be a divine, almost like a Shaktipat transmission type of spontaneous healing, or he would perform some kind of physically impossible operation on you. So one of the examples I give is a woman had her head cut off and it had a load of bees in it, and he shook the bees out and then stitched her head back on. So these kinds of experiences, you know, in order for people to feel like something can be effective, they often need an active, you know, an agent. That's why the placebo effect works. It doesn't work if you just say to someone, you're okay now, but the placebo effect is like proven to work. If you give someone a tablet and you say this tablet will make you feel better, then that's more likely to be effective. It's harder to have that kind of efficacy with nothing whatsoever. So what I believe would have happened in the sleep temples is that these dreams that the visitors had were so powerful and probably lucid, and in the lucid state, in a sort of neurological sense, you're essentially almost like asleep and awake at the same time, and your frontal cortex is activated, you're capable of critical thinking and self-reflection, and so in that sense your mind and your body are more deeply entangled there than any other state you can imagine. And there are even certain genes that are switched on that are switched off during wakefulness, and they're all tied in with the homeostasis response, this self-healing, cell repair, regeneration. So if you think that some healing event occurs in the dream state and you truly believe this is happening, it's the most potent kind of faith healing response that a person could experience, I think. So I'm not saying that the sleep temples would have always been 100% able to cure anyone of everything, and they were quite strict about not letting anyone that was too ill into their sanctuary. So if anyone was at properly death's door, they wouldn't let them in, and if anyone was about to give birth, they weren't allowed in, and things like this. So one of the characters that featured quite heavily in sleep temples, and this is I guess a archetype that we're going to be working with a lot, is the goddess Mnemosyne, who in the ancient Greek tradition is one of the oldest goddesses, and she is a titaness, and she's the personification of memory. But what's really important about Mnemosyne for me is it's not just about the ability to memory and the art of memory, but thinking of memory as an art is something that I want you to kind of start thinking about. And Mnemosyne was evoked by poets and orators, anyone who had to give a speech, anyone who had to be eloquent. And I think that this idea of dreaming eloquence and not just remembering your dreams, but making sense out of your dreams, being able to understand why this stuff is happening in a dream, what it means, what it refers to, is really, really important. And it's something that would have been very familiar to people in ancient times, and I think that we've kind of lost the thread because there's almost too many confusing, distracting elements in our everyday waking lives. You know, people always come to my workshops and say they have horrible nightmares, and I say to them, do you watch horror films? And they say yes, and I'm like, watching horror films all the time, you are literally like, it's like eating junk food and expecting to be feeling vital and healthy. Like, you wouldn't eat junk food and not realize that junk food made you sick. And I think that if you watch nothing but like trashy, horrible, even like shouty EastEnders programs, anything like that, that kind of energy gets into your mind, and those images are in your mind all the time. So often what happens is you'll see a horror film, and I remember, because I'm very careful about what TV and film I do watch, and I remember a few years ago sitting with my daughter, and she wanted to watch this like kind of slapstick film called Baby's Day Out, and it was basically a kid in various life-threatening situations that was supposed to be hilarious. But that night I had a dream that was almost every scene in Baby's Day Out reenacted with my kid in different various life-threatening situations. And just because I don't normally watch that sort of thing, I was like, oh, this has come from this is horrible. But especially these days when people binge Netflix and during the lockdown will be watching non-stop TV programs, films, whatever, I think it's worthwhile as a tip to write down everything that you've watched, everything that you've seen, everything you remember seeing during the day, just to get a handle and an idea of just how much stuff you do watch and how much stuff you do take in visually, and you know, and that you hear, the sounds that you hear as well. And just use that as a kind of tool to work out where things are coming from in your dreams, because so many people say to me that they have no idea where these things come from, and talking to them for 5 minutes I can tell them where they come from, because they've forgotten like half the stuff that they've done during the day. So so one of the things I'd really like you to think about, I'm going to bring up my screen here because I've got some images. So can you see my screen now? Yeah, okay. So one of the things I want you to think about is if there's anywhere in your dream, if there's a dream location that involves water in some way. And so I was talking a bit before about the goddess Mnemosyne. So she was the personification of memory, but also of sense making, of eloquence, of poetry, in terms of it being expressed beautifully, not so much of the creative process. She was also the mother of the muses. So this is interesting. She is the source of divine inspiration. And in the story of her birth, she is the daughter of Gaia and Uranus, of heaven and earth. So she represents this kind of union of the divine and the terrestrial. So if you can think, does anyone know of a place in their dreams that they regularly visit that incorporates water in some way, of any swimming pools, of any oceans, tsunamis, any sort of water scenery? I don't dream about the sea very much, considering I live dead opposite the sea. My water dreams do tend to be related to earlier memories. So if any of you can think of any watery elements in your dream maps. When I was doing this workshop with the kids, I was sort of sketching out my dream map. And what's interesting is there aren't kind of recognizable roads or routes to the separate areas of the dream place that I dream about, but I do get a sense of orientation in terms of whether something's to the northwest, east or south. Like I kind of understand where places are in relation to the others, but there isn't a map that joins them all together so much. They more kind of like appear, because I guess I move in different ways. But one of the things I do notice that a lot of the routes that do connect are water, so there'll be streams and rivers most often. Okay, so I'm really interested in hieroglyphic languages, and this is the Egyptian hieroglyph for the sound n. So it has a phonetic value of n, and the ideogram for water is mu, and that's represented by 3 lines of water. And I find working with hieroglyphs really interesting, and they're really useful to use as dream symbols. And one of the things I noticed, because at the beginning of lockdown I started to teach myself hieroglyphs, and the more hieroglyphs I looked at and the more I started to understand it, the more hieroglyphs would appear in my dreams, and my dreams would just be covered in hieroglyphs. And I do have an idea about the way the hieroglyphic words worked and how the language worked in ancient times impacted dreams in a different kind of way to our language that is made out of fairly abstract symbols with sound values. The way hieroglyphs worked is a little bit more almost holographic. It works on lots of different levels, and each symbol, sometimes these ones not so much. This is the Minoan tablet that was found at Festos on Crete. And but these languages that have these symbols that represent actual things, they often have a phonetic value, but they also have a kind of a meaning or represent the thing in itself. And so this way of thinking kind of changes the landscape of your mind, because you're not thinking in the same way when you're just using abstract sounds and words. Okay, so we're going to do some wordplay first of all. And as I was saying before, Scrabble is something that I've noticed correlates with frequent lucid dream episodes. So I've got some anagrams for you here. Can you see those? Okay, so the first one is wallet far, and the second one is Iran am, and then as he rose, angular sprint, Taiwan fortune, and infant tofu ho yu. So I want you to write all of these down, and you don't need to work them out now. We'll just write them down, and as we go along through these slides, you can start just looking at them and seeing if you can see they all relate to water in some way. So each word relates to a water feature. And as we go through our slides, just try looking at those arrangement of letters and see if anything just immediately leaps out, and try to get that sense of like, oh, I know what that word is without actually knowing what that word is. And as I said, we're going to be doing some drawing later as well. So my plan for this session is that we exercise all the kind of creative, all the creative practices at our disposal. Being on an online Zoom call, we can't really get into contemporary dance or anything like that right now. But we're going to do some, I'll set you a poetry task. I want you to write a poem or a very short bit of prose before you go to sleep. But I want you to just keep that water element in your mind and be thinking a lot. And I'm going to show you a lot of water images. Does everyone have those written down? Yeah. Okay, so this is some water that has been collected from the spring that was part of the Temple of Asklepios, which I think this is the one, yeah, this is the one on the Acropolis. So on the south side of the Acropolis in Athens, there's a temple to Asklepios there, a dream sanctuary. And the holy well is still really important to people there, and they collect water from it. This is I think this is part in the Welcome collection. It's a very, when's it from? It's like 1930. So holy wells are really important, and they feature in a lot of my dreams, going to these wells. And it's weird because they can take all kinds of forms. This is an incredibly pixelated, terrible image of somewhere in Glastonbury. I don't know whether this is, I think this must be the red spring because of the oxidation around it. So I love drinking. Has anyone drank from a magic spring recently? There's a magic spring in Hastings, which is really great. So I often go and drink from that. There's something about drinking from natural springs that I think connects you with the memory of the earth, and you're drinking this fluid that connects you with the planet. And that water has so much memory from passing through the earth and existing and moving through the earth for so long. It's almost like a way of communicating with the earth. And I think that the earliest forms of dream incubation, my theory about dreaming, my kind of like essential theory, is that the earliest people probably created religion as a result of having dreams. And I imagine that one of the most fantastic things, like Martin, you spoke about losing your dad when you were 6. One of the most incredible thing about dreaming is that you can have contact with your ancestors. And it's one of those dreams that often has the most impact on people, where they meet people that they love that have died. They're often able to have closure with them in a way that they couldn't when they were alive. And for ancient people, being able to communicate with those that had died in the dream state probably did inspire ideas of this underworld or this other world, or this continuation of spiritual life somehow once you did die. So this is a nice computer generated tsunami image. I had a dream quite recently of a tsunami that was actually frozen like this, and I was at the very top with a little pick and trying to climb over the top of the tsunami. Or I've had dreams where I'm a spectator at what seems to be like a tsunami festival, like there's a viewing platform where you're just watching tsunamis, and that's like the entertainment. Has anyone ever nearly drowned? Because I've had dreams of drowning has quite interesting near-death experience. So I had a dream quite recently, actually, that I was walking into a wave of water, and I don't often dream of being underwater, although I've had dreams of underwater fairgrounds, there's usually like a tunnel to get into them. But I had a dream where I was walking into water and I became aware that I didn't know if I'd be able to breathe underwater. And then obviously being in a dream, you can breathe underwater. So that's, trying to breathe underwater is often a pretty sure sign that you're dreaming. And this is one of my favorite go-to places in the lucid dream state. This is the Water Palace in Croydon in the 80s, which was like the best place to hang out ever. And I don't know if you can see it in the distance, there's the lazy river. The lazy river was my favorite. And I kind of realized that I incorporated a lot of Croydon iconography into my exotic dream scenery. And that actually, you know, when you're 7 or 8, or when you're a child, before you go through puberty, the way your brain works is that it absorbs information with this kind of equality, like it takes in everything with equal importance. And when you go through puberty, the neural pathways start to prune back so you can focus and concentrate on specific tasks. But the wonderful thing about being 7 or 8 before you hit puberty is that everything is super vivid, and what you'll find is that memories from that kind of age are much more vivid, and you can remember details really beautifully. I used to do these memory exercises, and we'll do some of them in a bit, where I used to walk through my childhood home and I could see things like what the handles were like on the cupboards and the tap fittings, and real tiny little details that I don't think I pick up so much on these days. You know, I wouldn't notice those kinds of things quite so much. So one of the things that I think we do, because I had this experience quite recently, so I have this recurring dream of trying to find this fountain, this water of life. And I went to get my hair cut a couple of years ago in Hastings, and I got talking to the hairdresser, and it turned out that we grew up in the same part of Croydon. And he said to me, did you ever drink from that magic spring in Beddington Park? And I was like, oh, I suddenly realized where all my dreams of drinking this magic spring water come from. They just come from, I've exoticized Beddington Park, because even the route to the spring is kind of what my dream is like. I have to go through this windy river. There are all these wading birds, but it's like a really super exotic. I've made it into like an exotic jungle, foreign, exciting place, and not just Beddington Park. But it is kind of all of those elements. There was even a garden centre that I went through that I realised I'd kind of exoticized this garden centre as well. So yeah, there was this spring in Beddington Park that all the kids, they made this kind of urban legend about it being this magic spring. And I'd forgotten about it, but he reminded me that that's what it was. And then what happened, as what happens with recurring nightmares, is when you figure out what it is, you stop having it. And so I stopped having it, and I was gutted because it's my favorite dream. So then I just decided that actually I want it back just for like creative fun purposes. So I got it to come back. Okay, so this is a really exciting looking water park in Berlin. This is called Tropical Islands, which I would love to go to. It's actually like an old Nazi hangar that they've turned into extremely exciting looking water park. And this is the most dangerous amusement park that's ever been built. I think there's a documentary about it on Netflix at the moment, but it's like this amusement park that someone built in America, and it was mega dangerous, and loads of people had lots of accidents when they went there. But that's the sort of thing that happened when we were kids. Like in the 80s, playgrounds were made out of like bits of old rough wood with nails poking out of them, and those sorts of things stick in your mind. Oh, that's another one from the most dangerous. So one of the things I noticed is you get a lot of underwater stuff. Do people have underwater things in their dreams? I have like an underwater fairground, and there was an underwater pier as well. This is a underwater amusement park in Australia where you can look at crocodiles if you so desire. This is the flooded city of Thonis Heraklion, and that's a statue of Cleopatra. So underwater things, they have a dreamy quality about them, I think. Like you can imagine seeing this kind of imagery in a dream, I think. There's also something interesting about dreams that I'd like to talk about, which is the sort of light quality that you get in a dream. Sometimes I think that in a dream, perhaps because you don't have your eyes open and you're not bringing in light through your eyes as you would in the waking state, you're generating light from within yourself somehow, and the light quality is different. It almost has this kind of twilighty, almost underwater look about it, like it's more blues and violets. And one of the things I've kind of thought about before is it seems like light doesn't come from a solar source. It seems to emanate from the features and the objects of the dreams. There seems to be this kind of like dark radiance in dreams, and the light quality is often something that does alert you to the fact that you are dreaming, I've noticed. This is just a plan for an underwater museum. So does anyone have like futuristic city type dreams? Lots of people talk about that kind of thing. Yeah. This is another underwater theme park in Bahrain, a bit of that underwater hotel. And I think, you know, we forget sometimes where influences come from, but it's useful to think about your early childhood, because actually so many images come from things like James Bond films, or, you know, films that we've seen as a kid, and they make deep impacts on us. I remember seeing a James Bond film, I can't remember which one it was, where James Bond was put in a coffin and went along, like trundled along a little conveyor belt to be cremated. And I found that utterly terrifying, and that was my nightmares sorted for ages. So there are all of these things that we may not consciously recognize the source, but quite often stuff comes from dreams. And, you know, people absorb so much information, so much visual data, that, you know, we saw thousands and thousands of adverts. Even like every single advert has an impact. I often think about, you know, the first people that went to go to the cinema to see The Great Train Robbery, or one of those very early cinema releases, and were like screaming in their seats. And you think, we're still those same human beings really, but we've got used to being bombarded with media and information. But actually we're still quite sensitive to it. I listened to a radio documentary about, I think it was 2 women that were traveling on the first steam train, and they were so overwhelmed by the speed and the commotion that they fainted. You kind of think that we're constantly living in this like hectic, confusing, disorientating world, but we're just about got a handle on it. So water fountains feature quite a lot in my dreams, and this is from the Crystal Palace Great Exhibition in the Victorian era, and this was a fountain made out of crystal. And then spas often feature heavily. I have this spa that I always go to in dreams very often, and it exists in different places. Sometimes it's in a pyramid, but there are certain features, certain shower cubicles, certain elements of it that I always recognize that are quite similar. So this is the Roman bath in Bath, and often people dream about moving through water, or being near pools, being near the sea, being near rivers and streams. Dreaming about whirlpools or vortexes or drowning. But it is useful to think about setting yourself a quest. So perhaps it would be a good quest for you tonight to dream about trying to find the fountain, the water of life, somehow. So I'll just bring this back to the group scene. My thing gone. Okay, so I think what we'll try to do is we'll try to think about features in our dream worlds that come up quite frequently. Can anyone think of a specific location that as soon as they're there, they know they're dreaming, a specific place? Martin, maybe you could tell us about your train station.
There should be so many other people speaking up right now. I don't have enough of these. So It's not super regular enough. I think I've probably just had it quite a handful of times where it just seems vaguely familiar, and it's all about trying to connect from one platform to another, and always like in a rush, and it always looks really, really familiar, to the point where you even know where the shortcuts are and how to get there as quick as possible. And it's just like literally trying to get from step one to the end, basically. But yeah,
do you miss the train a lot?
I used to. I used to use it an insane amount, and don't really anymore because of where I live and obviously everything has happened. But yeah, a lot of what you're saying as well.
One of the things I've noticed about those train station dreams is I'm often like rushing or missing the train. I'm often at the top of the stairs when the train leaves, or I get on the train and it's the wrong train going to a different place, to the place that I wanted to go to. And I think there is something about that. I remember having a lot of dreams when I was a kid of driving an out of control car. And I noticed that as I got a bit older and maybe a bit sure of myself as well, when I drove, I could control the car and I went where I wanted to go. But when I was a kid, the car used to be all over the place.
I have that dream regularly as well about driving, because I still don't actually have a license, but can drive. And I have this dream where I'm just driving. I'm like, I shouldn't be driving. I'm going to get pulled over at some point. And that happens quite regularly as well, actually. Yeah. Water, I was saying something the other day, actually, water is interesting because I think I said to you last time we were speaking, I love water people and like surfing and that sort of thing, but I'm not a confident person in the water. Where you describing of like the 80s, you can remember what like swimming lessons were like when you were at school and you used to go to do swimming lessons at the leisure centre. I was telling my friend the other day, it was kind of like Lord of the Flies, just kids running around everywhere and like people just drowning, people just, whatever. So
yeah, I remember that thing of like the swimming test that you were supposed to wear pajamas and a brick was thrown and you had to pick it up from the bottom of the swimming pool. But no, it seemed like no one ever actually did it. It was like an urban legend that you were supposed to do it, but no one ever seemed to do it. It's like the Chelsea Smilers.
Yeah, basically. But the recurring stuff as well, you said, I had that, like I was 6 when my dad died, and I had the same dream continuously where he was like, I think he may have died when he was at home after coming out of the hospital. So it was always like this energy in my parents' room when I was a kid, where when I was having these dreams, it'd always just be this presence coming downstairs to like get me. You know when you feel you form really weird, strange rituals as a kid. You got these strange little superstitions. I think as a result of that, I had this weird thing where every time I used the bathroom, the toilet, I made up in my head that I had to get to the bottom of the stairs before the sound of the chain stopped. Otherwise, I was in some sort of like immortal danger. But that sort of stuff definitely carries on into your dreams. And then you're right, at the moment you start confronting it, you almost find yourself in the dream like, oh, all right, let's just get this over with. I'm done with this now. Gets to a point where you're done with it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what about the memory palace technique. I know it's a little bit off topic and not the same thing, but I know that's used, by people like Darren Brown, where he's banned from every casino in the country because you can go in, count cards, and he did that insane thing where he's got 4 rooms, 52 objects for each card, and then a sticker on each card to represent the 4 decks that are shuffled together, and you just watch it like, wow. So yeah, interesting to see.
But yeah, so this is the thing with the memory palace mnemonic device. It works differently in the dream because really all the data and the information that's stored by those architectural features is really all about you. And like you were saying about, who was saying about their family home, it being like their family home, but it's not quite their family home, but it's not, Mary Beth, you said about that. So those different things often, I think you create a composite architectural feature out of your personal relationship with that space and your feelings and your emotions about that place. Like I dream a lot about my childhood home, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that your memory is so incredibly powerful at that age, and you do take in like every aspect of it. But also, you spend so much time there, and there's such a deep emotional connection with that childhood home, because you went through so much when you were there. And one thing I notice as well is, like, there are places where I've lived where I'm exceedingly happy, and they are like beautified versions of the real place in the dream space. Like the last house I lived in, I just loved it so much, and in my dream it was a tree house, and it overlooked this ruined underwater temple that was about 2 miles out to sea, but I could see close up looking out of my window. And it was that house, but it was nothing like that house, but I just still knew it was the house. It was in this beautiful tree. It had this beautiful like balcony where I could see everywhere, and there was an old stone wall going up the side, and there was hardly anything that would relate it to that house really in physical terms, but it had that energy of the house, and it was that house to my mind.
That's the amazing thing, is that you know things without knowing them, without the need to explain them, put it into words, have any sort of connotation of any other images. I get that in dreams where I'm able to know things just literally like that without any expression of it whatsoever. You just know it. And I used to fall asleep with my favorite movies on repeat over and over again, and you get that thing where dialogue creeps in, and that's how I used to know I was asleep, because I was like reciting the dialogue in my dreams. I was like, oh, I know the next line in this little series. So that was kind of how I used to get used to doing it a little bit as well.
Okay, so does anyone else have any specific architectural features or landscape features, or does anyone go to countries that they may have never visited in real life in their dreams? Because I had a friend who actually moved to Japan as a result of dreaming that she was living this alternate life in Japan for about 5 years. She went to Japan to learn Japanese, and it was because she kept dreaming every single night that she was a woman in Japan living this completely different life. Yes, Myra?
Sorry, muted. Yeah, that's really cool about your friend moving to Japan. I love those things where something comes up in a dream and it indicates a thing you can explore, and then you can go and explore it. Yeah, I think it's not places I've never been. I mean, there are, but I wouldn't say there are definitely countries or but I do definitely have some reoccurring places. Some of them I guess they've got a quality, like you say. I think the light thing is really good, but they're also quite realistic looking in a way. So I'm not always lucid when I'm there, but I am sometimes. There's one which I know definitely would just come from my childhood, which is like a real rolling downs landscape, because I lived in a tiny village in the South Downs for a time as a kid. So I would have just kind of constructed that at that time, I guess. There's another which I've sort of drawn out when you were saying about the water, which comes up in really different contexts. When I was thinking about it, I always think it's somewhere different, but it kind of looks the same, which is like a kind of harbour, jetty, port sort of place. Very, very, very still water and sort of white piers coming out, and sometimes you can see bits of other landscape. I had one dream where I was on an island that was just made of them. The entire island was surrounded by ferry ports, and there wasn't anything else to the island really. So yeah, harbours and ports. There's another one where I met God as a beautiful woman in a harbour that I think is kind of the same place. That's many years ago.
I like that. So ports and harbours are...
Yeah.
I have a few harbour dreams, and I think there's something about that travel element that seems to be really consistent in dreaming, and it is almost like, you have to be in constant motion to keep a dream going. And so maybe that's why all these different travel elements come into it, because you have to be moving forward all the time somehow.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, travel comes up all the time in my dream sharing group. Everyone seems to dream of trains, buses, boats, harbours. Yeah, definitely. And the same thing as well you were saying about the train stations, like in that dream that was all ferry ports, we were just racing to try and get to the right ferry port, and we kept finding other ferry ports and we just couldn't get to the right one.
Yeah, so that sounds like classic dream ferry port anxiety. But I think it is true about there's something about the motion, definitely, because one of the things I do in my live workshops is practice the hypnagogic state, and the hypnagogic state is all about moving through space. And I always describe it like when Alice falls down the rabbit hole. That's hypnagogia. When you're falling down the rabbit hole, you have to be constantly just flowing past these things, not allowing them to like take up too much attention or focus, and just drift past them. And then when you're in Wonderland, you're like in the dream proper. But the rabbit hole is a really good hypnagogic analogy, because that's what hypnagogia feels like. It feels like you're falling into something. You know, when you get that thing as you're drifting off and you go like that, like you might have stepped down a curb or something, you get a myoclonic jerk. That usually happens in the hypnagogic state. So holding on and trying to expand that hypnagogic state is really useful to strengthen your awareness when you're in the dream. And you can travel through hypnagogia into the dream without losing awareness of what's going on. So that's a useful thing to do. We're going to do sleep hypnosis in a bit, but I just want to give you some images. So if while you're sitting there, if you are sketching out places that you dream about, I mean, it might be helpful to think about places that were important to you when you were a kid, and work on that time frame, work on that time of your life between like 7 and 10, where those things might have been vivid. I speak to a lot of people who say that they are perpetually stuck at about 14 in the dream world, whereas they might be like 40 in real life, but they're stuck at that age 14. And often people have nightmares of going back to school and doing exams over and over and over again, which I always think is quite sad because, you know, that must have caused them so much anxiety at that time to have those, to, you know, to still be having those recurring dreams. So there's got to be something that they can do to get out of that loop. But I think that it's true that sometimes there's this lag between the dream world and reality, where you're a few years younger in the dream state. So I've got some images I would like to share with you. So there are a few images that I want you to draw, because I want you to start thinking about marine life and aquatic life and sea creatures and river creatures and wading birds. And, you know, often for me, something that's exotic stands out in a dream and reminds me of the fact that I'm dreaming. So I'm super into birds, and I was in the Young Ornithologist Club when I was a kid. So I've always loved exotic birds. And where I lived in Croydon, it was actually like on a sewage farm. I lived next to a sewage farm, and because there was no one allowed on it, would occasionally get these like really rare exotic birds flying over. And one time I saw a hoopoe, which was the most exciting bird I ever saw in Croydon. And seeing things like that, seeing things out of context, they're the things that make you question reality and wonder if you're awake or not. And when you're in a dream and you see something that's out of place, I often dream of lions and lionesses. And those dreams usually start where I'm scared of this like large predatory animal coming towards me. And then I realize, because it's unusual, that I must be dreaming. And then I am able to either transform the lion or lioness into something unthreatening, or it softens to me. So seeing those things and recognizing those things are useful. Okay, so let's just see where we are here. Okay, so these are the kinds of birds that I see in my dreams quite a lot. And I do think that it had something to do with, I got this book called Hamlin's Encyclopedia of Animals in 1985, and I used to read it every single night and look at the pictures every single night before I went to sleep. And it was kind of like my dream dictionary. I used all the animals out of this book, and they peopled and populated my dreams. So, you know, these are the kinds of birds that when I see them as well, they're bigger than they would be in normal life. They're like dream size. So let me think of a great one. One is that is really peculiar looking, I always think, is the shoebill. So I want you to draw some of these birds and just think about, imagine yourself traveling down a river and seeing one of these birds, and just sketch them out and think about the kind of environment that they're living in. What it would mean to you to be going about your everyday business and come across something like a shoe bill. I think, you know, when we're kids, we spend pretty much all of our time playing and drawing and writing. And we don't do enough of that, generally speaking, as adults. And those are the exercises that you need to do to have an active imagination.
I think I was saying to you recently, wasn't I? Because I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, and I've been drawing like so much more in the last year and a half again since lockdown. And I'm good at copying, but I would, you know, not really ever make things up. And I've noticed that same thing. The more I've been reading and the more I've been drawing, the more I've actually been using my imagination. I find it a lot easier to be creative. Yeah, I have noticed that like massively.
I think this year of lockdown has been really great for some people, just in terms of taking their foot off the pedal and recognizing what in their life is actually really important and what has value. I hope that we'll like implement some of these things into our new world. I think everyone has this eagerness to return to normal, but normal isn't necessarily hugely desirable.
Yeah, I think it'll be a letdown for a lot of people when they actually realise it's still there. It's still just the best version of themselves, which might not be particularly great. They've not really done much.
I think it's, you know, it's really great taking images that you see, you know, dream mapping as well. Like people often get a bit bored about dream journaling and they don't want to write loads of stuff, but there is something about just sketching something out or maybe just writing a few words. You know, there's something really different about dream memory in comparison with waking memory. But one of the things you do notice with lucid dreaming is because your frontal cortex is activated and you're able to self-reflect, you remember it the same that you know, the same way you would remember a waking reality. So that is one useful thing about lucid dreaming. There's a stuffed one of these in, I think it's the Museum of Natural History in Oxford. It really is looks like a dinosaur.
Funny what you were saying earlier about stuff you take in from like TV and the news, because I actually have one dream I remember from being around about probably 13 or 14, and it was a bit like that image you showed earlier, the big tsunami over the building. And it was, I'd watched the news the day before, and there was a clip of like a shark jumping out the water, and it was like quite like quite like sharp. And the next night, I remember I was having a dream walking around the corner near like my friend that lives around the corner from where I grew up. And in the dream, like this just massive wave of water came over the building, and like with this giant shark like in the sky. And I knew at the time it was like that's exactly where it came from. It was almost identical. I still remember it now. It's strange.
Yeah, it's really useful just working out your motifs and writing and drawing them down. You do develop an awareness of where these things have come from. You know, like when I worked out where my drinking the water of life came from, it was suddenly so obvious, but because I'd never really kind of written it down or drawn it out and thought about it in those terms, it hadn't occurred to me before then. We've got this nice night heron here as well. And you can, you know, if you haven't finished the other one, you could make a composite bird, because, you know, if you're not an ornithologist and you're not fussy about what the bird is exactly, as I've discovered, some people, when they dream of birds, they just say they dreamt of a bird. I can't imagine doing that. But you know, if you don't read a lot of books about birds, then you can make up your own composite bird, and you can have a bit of night heron and a bit of shoebill in there. There is something, I think, to me, birds, you know, you have this thing in ancient Egypt as well, and a lot of ancient religious traditions of birds being messengers from the gods, because they have this ability to transcend the realm of the air and land on earth. And they have this wisdom. When you look at them, they do seem so sentient and wise. I think one of the best things that's come out of lockdown is that people are having this deeper relationship with nature, because actually, because of the self-isolation rules, people are going for walks on their own. And actually, I think people don't necessarily go for walks on their own very often. And when you're on your own is when you really deeply connect with nature. I've never appreciated the seasons as much as I have this year. So you might see some birds like this in your dream. If you do, I'll be very pleased for you. And I'd be interested to know as well if they're like bigger than they might be in reality. There was a night heron apparently spotted in our local park recently.
The only bird I can't get out of my head at the moment is Big Bird from Sesame Street now.
He has got those sort of knobbly knees.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny to think that, like you were saying, Martin, I started drawing more during lockdown as well. And it's very meditative, even of itself. Kind of,
Absolutely.
it's kind of sad that adults stop doing these things often.
That's the best thing about it. I was just putting on some like lo-fi beats and just 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours just go by like that. And the biggest thing you appreciate is that you haven't been thinking you've had no voice, no narrative, no past or future. You've just been like very present, which is yeah, it's great. A lot of people said that actually lately.
Has anyone worked out any of your anagrams yet?
Work the first one out. And then
So there are 2 things I would like you to do before you go to bed. And if you could make a note of this, that would be great. Actually, there's 3 things. So if you could write this down, I want you to write down before you go to bed everything that you've seen today, everything you remember from your day to day, like any TV show that you've watched, any reflections upon this session that you can think of, any experiences that you had when you went out. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to write a poem or a short piece of prose about water, about your feelings and emotions and experience of water. What is your emotional relationship to water? What effect does it have on your life? It's something we experience every single day. And the last thing I want you to do is, before you go to bed tonight, I want you to get yourself a glass of water And I want you to perhaps light a candle or have some ritual with this glass of water where you recognize its sacred, divine nature, the fact that it's connected to everything else on the planet and in the universe. And I want you to whisper into the surface of the water something that you would like to experience in your dream this evening. And I would highly suggest, before you go to sleep as well, that you do have some kind of purification ritual. So I always have a bath before I go to bed, and actually having a bath is extremely good sleep hygiene anyway, because you tend to go to bed feeling more well rested, but also a lot of good quality sleep has to do with temperature regulation throughout the night. And if you have a bath before you go to sleep, it actually reduces your core temperature. And that's what helps you have a better night's sleep. So you'll drift off more easily. And when you are going to sleep, you know, we want to keep the water memory. So write that poem or that prose when you're in bed, when you're getting ready for sleep, and be thinking about it then. And then I want you to think about, when you're lying in bed, I want you to think about the place that you want to go, and think about something watery, some watery place that you'd like to visit. And on your piece of paper where you have your prose or your poem written down, just write a very brief intention of the place that you want to hit in your dream this evening. So we have some other types of aquatic life here. I have dreams quite often of sea life, and actually especially whales for some reason. I dream about whales quite a lot. Killer whales are so graphic as well. I think that killer whales are quite a frequent dream creature. There is something about an encounter with an animal in a dream that feels very magical, because often they are larger than life and they have this ability to communicate with you on a deeper level. So if you want to sketch any of these images of these sea creatures, of these river animals, all of these images are going into your mind, and they may come up later on in your dream state. So this is something we're going to think about a little bit, is hydromancy, of using water to do fortune telling. It's an ancient practice of divination to look at the surface of water and to try to make sense out of the, I guess, interference pattern on the surface of water. So this is something, it's a very sort of relaxing, trance-inducing technique to look at the surface of water, to look at the surface of the sea. I live opposite the sea, and I can just stare at the sea for hours. Like the undulations and the pattern on the surface of the sea is completely mesmerizing, and it does become an interference pattern. And from that interference pattern, you can start to see other images pop out sometimes. So I would really suggest that as a meditative technique, is to try and find a body of water somewhere and look at the ripples on the surface, and have a very soft gaze whilst you look at it, and just see what other images appear to you whilst you're looking at it. I'm interested as well in how your face appears when you look into water, how when you peer into the surface of a pond or a stream, your image appears. And I often think about ancient people and their lack of mirrors, and the reflective surfaces that they had at their disposal were pools and water sources, and later things like obsidian mirrors, which would give you this different view of yourself, different view of your face, this kind of softer, more ethereal type of impression. you think about Alice when she enters the looking glass and she goes into another dimension. There's something about dreaming that is this kind of realm of water. It is this fluid form of consciousness that alters according to your thoughts and feelings. So Martin, you were saying about sleep paralysis, and I think it's very true that when you're in sleep paralysis, it's actually a very good foundation state to become lucid. But what often happens is people become a little bit scared of something for whatever reason. And the more attention they give that scary thing, the more mental energy and power it has, until often people say that they feel like their chest is being compressed by the weight of this fear or this fearful entity. And I think that that is purely often down to the level of attention and energy that you've given that entity. And actually, one of my friends, Engelbert Winkler, who invented a hypnagogic light machine, one of his techniques for becoming lucid is pretending to have sleep paralysis. And actually, it's a really useful technique for inducing what we call the wake-induced lucid dream technique. So if you pretend you've got sleep paralysis and you lie on your back and you pretend you can't move, you eventually fall asleep, but you're kind of conscious for the whole thing. So you are able to travel through hypnagogia into the dream state without losing your thread of consciousness. So that's a useful tip for tonight. And I would suggest as well, when you do go to bed this evening, to lie on your back and try not to roll over and get too comfortable until you're starting to see hypnagogic imagery. And when you do start to see hypnagogic imagery, if you're still aware enough, bring to mind water and watery things, and that will seed your future dreaming. Because what tends to happen when we go into the hypnagogic state, any thoughts or ideas that we have, they manifest into dream matter. And then if you are able to be completely aware of that process of drifting off to sleep, you do realize that traveling through hypnagogia, you're creating the realm of the dream once you end up there. I didn't explain that very well, but basically what you think about in the hypnagogic state, or what appears, ends up being like the full dream. Okay, so I think, like I said before as well, don't forget to send me your postal address, because I will post you some dream tea. And so this is a dream tea recipe that I've made that is very inspired by ancient Minoan tradition. So the culture that lived on Crete and Santorini and the islands around the Cyclades. And this mixture has Cretan mountain tea in it, and dittany of Crete as well, which is actually an aphrodisiac, and also has saffron in it, which is also an aphrodisiac. So one of the side effects is that it gives you very romantic dreams. And it also has chamomile and lavender and lemon balm and rosemary and thyme and valerian as well. So it's not to be sipped if you need to go and drive a forklift truck or anything like that. But it does make you feel nice and sleepy and relaxed. Okay, so let me find a suitable image and then we'll start with our sleep hypnosis. So if you want to, you can turn all of your screen and your microphone off now and just get really comfortable. Turn your lights down. If you want to go and get a blanket, go and get a blanket. Make yourself really comfortable and relaxed. And you can either lie down or sit down. And I'm going to do a sleep hypnosis now to try and really embed these ideas of dreaming about water and appreciating the divine nature of water and the memory of water. And we're going to set a quest for this evening's dreaming. Okay, so just get yourself in a very comfortable, relaxed position. Nothing else to do for the rest of the night. And in this position, just take a couple of really nice, slow, deep breaths. And as you breathe in, just think about your body becoming very calm and still, very relaxed, very easy. And you just feel your body just melt into the surface upon which it rests, just melting like butter in a frying pan, just softening and becoming very, very easy and relaxed. And when you take another very deep breath in, you feel that pure, clean air really healing your body very deeply, transforming your body, into a perfect, relaxed, easy, light shape. And when you breathe out, just breathe out any last little bits of tension or unease. Feel very calm and relaxed now. And your eyelids are very soft. Just open just slightly. And I want you to focus your attention now on one spot in front of you, somewhere in the distance, some space between you and this object. I want you to concentrate on this spot, all your attention, like a laser beam on this spot. And then I want you to pull your attention back now so that your focus hovers in the space between that spot and your eyes, just hovering in midair, gently gazing at nothingness in midair. And then I want you to pull your attention back even further so that your focus is centered on the very surface of your eyeballs. So just through your very lightly opened eyelids, you can see your eyelashes and glimmers of light and shape on the outside of your eyes. And then I want you to pull your attention back even further now to the other side of your eyeballs, the back of your eyes. Imagine the blood flowing through the veins at the back of your eyes. Your eye stalks traveling back into your head, drawing your attention all the way back into your head. And then I want you to take your attention even further back than that. And I want you to imagine your pineal gland in the dead center of your brain, like a grain of crystal, the size of a piece of rice. I want you to imagine it now, clear and glistening like a diamond in the center of your brain. And this tiny splinter of crystal, the size of a grain of rice, shard of light, hits this now. And I want your attention to settle on this point of light at the center of your brain. And now I want you to take your attention even further back into the visual processing area of your brain, at the very back of your brain, just above the top of your neck. Bring your attention here, and I want you to imagine this like a swirling kaleidoscope of colors, like a soup of rainbow worms, moving around, forming shapes, creating patterns and textures. And I want you to bring your attention now down your neck and into your heart. And I want you to imagine your heart like a beautiful jade stone, soft and radiant, glowing green with love, beautiful divine energy, translucent, perfect, flawless, healthy, capable of healing others. Imagine your radiant heart now, and the beautiful green light emanates from your heart, forming this circle of influence, this sphere of radiant power that emanates from the center of your chest. And you feel this radiance, you can see this radiance transmitting many meters in front and behind of your body. Created this orb of love power, and you are surrounded by this orb of green, beautiful jade light. I want you to imagine now the lightness of this beautiful orb of green light picks you up from where you're lying or sitting, and gently you begin to rise into the air, lightly like a bubble, like a balloon, just gliding gently through the air. I want you to imagine now rising up through the room, through the ceiling, through the top of the house or the flat or wherever you're living, and gliding into the night sky. And you can feel the radiance of the stars above you sparkling and twinkling and vibrating in the heavens. And you feel these pinpricks of light upon your bubble of jade as you drift over the houses and treetops and gently glide through the clouds. And you can see the countryside rolling out before you. Beautiful moonlit countryside, dark blues and violets, dark greens and spots of reflected moonlight and starlight on the trees and on the water below. And you spot in the distance a glistening silver thread winding its way through trees and hills. You can see the surface of the water reflecting the beautiful silver moonlight. It travels, winding its way, gently drift down to this river. And you feel your bubble alight onto the surface of the water. And the current and the flow of this river picks you up, and you travel along, meandering through the countryside, observing on either side the long grasses and the bowing trees, the willows dipping their hair in the water, the frogs and the birds crawling around the riverbank. You see water voles You hear fish breaking the surface of the water and splashing, catching insects, catching moths. And you travel very beautifully down this river. You feel so calm, so very relaxed and peaceful and happy, just flowing easily along with this beautiful river at night, enjoying the luminous moon above you, feeling the rays of the moon reflect off your skin, imbuing you with the divine radiance of the beautiful moon, our companion stars. You feel the starlight land upon your skin like a celestial shower of sparkles. And you feel quite relaxed and easy, just lying back in your bubble, drifting along with the water of the river. And you can hear the water murmuring as it carries you along. You feel very calm, very relaxed. I'm going to count down now from 10 to 1. And when I get to 1, you'll be all the way down, very, very bottom of relaxation, ready to dream, ready to sleep. 10, feeling very easy now as your body moves through the water, gently drawing a line, forming ripples and trails as it travels down the water. 9. Your body just feels even more warm and peaceful and calm, very still and very soft, very easy and relaxed. 8. You can hear the frogs in the reeds, and you can hear bats and birds flit overhead. And you can even hear the wings of moths beating. They land upon the surface of the bubble, trying to capture the reflected light. 7. You see the landscape around you become more rocky, more mountainous. The reeds are replaced by low-growing flowers, and the air is heavy with their perfume. It smells so beautiful and exotic and rich and lush as you travel down this river. 6. You start to witness statues rising up out of the large stones and rocks that tumble into the river, tumble into the edges of the river. You start to see human forms and statues. You notice their faces and you see their postures. They're all standing in a posture of adoration. 5. Travel alongside some of these statues. They frame either side of the stream now. The river narrows into a stream, and you can feel your bubble moving along, still very easily. You feel the water underneath you becoming more shallow. 4. You feel the bottom of the bubble roll stones over the bottom of this stream. And the stream flows into a large square pool surrounded
by temple pillars carved out of white marble. They glow in the moonlight. They radiate a beautiful white, heavenly color. 3. Your bubble rests upon some steps that lead out of this pool. And as you get to your feet, the bubble disappears and you step barefoot onto these stone steps and rise up out of the shallow pool. 2. On the edge of the pool is a wide plaza paved with huge marble flagstones that glow in the moonlight. 1. You step across this plaza and you feel the cool marble against the soles of your feet. And you follow the moonlight, which creates a line across the marble. And you realize you're walking along a colonnade, covered pillars take you on a path and lead you to a small chamber at the end, behind an arched doorway. As you cross the threshold, you recognize that you're in a divine, sacred sanctuary. And in the middle of this small chamber is a low stone bed. And in the corner of this room, you can hear trickling water. And you investigate this sound. Get closer and closer to the sound of trickling water. And as you listen very quietly to the sound of trickling, murmuring water, as it appears through this wall and trickles out of a bronze tap, you hear a language being spoken in this murmuring water. You can hear words and wisdom, but it's very quiet, very subtle. You need to drink the water to understand the language. So you hold your cupped hands underneath the water spout, and the cold, clean, pure, holy water pours into your cupped hands, and you fill your hands with water. And you bring your cupped hands to your lips, and you drink very, very deeply of the water of memory. And you can feel this water flowing over your tongue, chilling your teeth, and trickling down your throat. And as you drink this water, you recognize the divine nature of everything around you, the holy nature of nature itself, of water, of light, of earth. And you lie on the stone bed, making your body comfortable upon the sheepskin that lies upon the stone, feeling with your fingertips the curly fibers, the warmth of the leather. It's a very warm, peaceful evening, and you allow your eyes to close fully and relax into a divine dream, listening to the trickling of the water, listening to the language of the water, and feeling the memory of the water flowing through your body, awakening every memory in every cell of your body. I'm going to count from 1 to 10. And when I get to 10, you'll be back in the room, ready to start your sleep rituals, ready to go off for an amazing night of dreaming about all sorts of watery features and the memory of water. 1, everything in your body feels harmonized right now. Everything's working perfectly. Your temperature's perfect. Your heart rate is perfect. Your breathing is perfect. Your mind is perfectly relaxed and harmonious. 2, you feel the warmth of the room around you, the warmth of the stone bed underneath you, the warmth of the sheepskin making contact with your skin, the warmth of your toes and your fingertips. 3, your body feels easy and calm and peaceful and relaxed. 4, you become aware of the sounds around you, of the trickling water, of the sounds in the room where you lie or sit, of the light, the edges of your vision. 5, start to feel a little bit more active now, a little bit more awake. 6, start to feel present within your fingertips and the tips of your toes. 8, start to feel aware now in your head and neck. Start to feel movement in your legs and arms. 9, take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath in and remind yourself of where you are. Feel the room around you, the space around you. Feel the awareness of the day returning to you. 10, fully back in the room now. You can open your eyes and come back to the present moment. Okay, well, I think we should probably leave it on that and not get on to too much of too far away from feeling sleepy and nice and relaxed. So as I said before, you've got some ideas about what you can do before you go to sleep tonight. Does anyone have any questions before we go?
I just have very often in that period of hypnagogic state, I have a quick breath that takes me out of it. And I just realized recently, I think it's because when I was a little kid, my brother used to play tricks and hide under my bed until he could hear. He'd say, I'd wait till I could hear you were twitching and you're breathing. And then he would push the mattress up and I'd wake up. And I wonder if that's I don't know. I mean, you taking us through that, I didn't experience that, but I got to the point, I got to the feeling of the memory of it. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything to, I guess what my question is that, have you ever heard of anything like that? Or is that in terms of the breathing pattern changing? I guess maybe that's an opportunity to just stay more conscious. Or
I think that often people don't like to sleep on their backs because you don't tend to be able to breathe as well on your back often. And if people have sleep apnea or they snore especially, it's not good for them to sleep on their backs. But even if you don't do any of those things, you tend to be more comfortable sleeping on your side. Do. But you know, like I was saying earlier about the myoclonic jerk, that's kind of what happens in a myoclonic jerk. Your body does like a kind of shock, and you often do take a sharp intake of breath at that point as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if your brother did that to you a lot, that that's somehow ingrained in you to be on these levels.
Well, it's been amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope you all have great dreams, and I'd love to hear about them and see your pictures. And if you can draw any of the scenes that you see when you go to sleep this evening, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're lucky we all came back into the room at the end of that. I was nearly gone. You have a very, very, very relaxed voice.
Yeah, your voice is gorgeous.
As somebody that talks for a living, like, you have a very, very, very insanely relaxing voice.
I did a sleep hypnosis thing at it was part of the death at Brompton Cemetery a couple of years ago, and I actually made myself fall asleep halfway through. And I had like a little micro sleep, and it was because I'd had to get up like ridiculously early to do it, because when people book you for stuff in London, they always forget that Hastings is like trying to come from a third world country. So I had to get up at something like 4:30 in the morning to get there on time. So I was really tired. So I had a little micro snooze during the trance. But you do send yourself into a bit of a trance when you do that kind of thing. But I've got a load of sleep hypnosis tracks on my website as well, which you can use. And I'm going to be doing another recording to be like an accompanying ritual to my sleep tea, actually. So when I've done that, I'll send you the links for that as well. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone for coming along.
I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Have you heard of hypnosis for hypnagogic? After you wake up, you want to return to your sleep. Have you heard of hypnosis in a hypnopompic state?
Yeah.
What's the difference
between hypnagogic and hypnopompic?
Hypnosis, yeah.
Oh, well, hypnosis, the way I do hypnosis is I really just do sleep hypnosis, a kind of guided, it's basically guided meditation, I suppose, for hypnagogia. So I want to try to guide people through hypnagogia, and that's how I practice sleep hypnosis.
So guiding out of the sleep, you haven't thought how to make it train lucid dreaming in hypnopompic sleep?
Well, hypnopompic is the sort of visuals that you have when you're rousing from sleep or from a dream. So that's at the end of sleeping and dreaming.
You can return to your sleep.
Yeah, it is very useful to, I mean, the wake back to bed technique is one of the most popular and common techniques for lucid dreaming. So that's when you wake up after having your night's sleep, and then without doing anything too distracting or stimulating, you go back to sleep. And that tends to be when you're more likely to have lucid dreaming, because the sleep cycles throughout the night become longer and more intense, of REM sleep especially, as you get closer to waking up in the morning. Your brain prioritizes, or your body prioritizes, deep sleep for cellular regeneration, and once it's got that out of the way, the REM sleep cycles become longer and longer. So that's why often lucid dreaming occurs most commonly during naps and early morning lie-ins.
Is it better to have one place to go, or separate random generatedly dream palaces, instead of one that you have just? Yes, that's the question.
Do you mean like dream places to visit?
Is it better to train separate, completely not intertwining places, dream places, palaces, instead of one?
I don't know whether it would make much difference. I think that if you're going anywhere, the idea is that you remember the fact that you're dreaming and wake up within the dream. So wherever you're going, it doesn't matter.
Okay. No question.
Okay, so I wish you all the very best dreams, and please do let me know how you get on, and don't forget to send me your addresses so I can post you some dream tea as well, and I hope that you enjoy that too. I personally love it, and I noticed that it gave me romantic dreams, and I told a couple of friends, and then I just got these hilarious messages from friends, because actually what they were all talking about is meeting their like teenage loves of their lives again, and having like romantic times with them. And it's funny actually, but I think it is because it's aphrodisiac, and basically aphrodisiacs just make you feel kind of like nice and lovey. When you fall asleep feeling that nice fuzzy lovey feeling, then you're more likely to have nice fuzzy lovey dreams. And I think that it's an important thing to consider actually how you fall asleep. So many people just fall asleep because they're really knackered. I'm always amazed that people fall asleep watching TV, because I'm one of those people that cannot. I have to be in my bed, and it has to be completely pitch black, and it has to be totally silent. Otherwise, I don't sleep at all. So thinking about how you fall asleep is really important. Like, make a real ritual out of going to bed at night, because it is a divine act to go to sleep and to dream, and we should make it as special as possible, because dreaming is hugely enriching. If you think about, how you feel when you wake up after a horrible dream, it ruins your whole day. In fact, it can ruin more than a whole day. So if you wake up after having a fantastic, beautiful, life-affirming dream, that has a real resonance for your waking life as well. It's really powerful. So yeah, I hope you all have a great sleep this evening, and thank you again so much for coming along. I really appreciate you coming along and buying a ticket, and hopefully see you at another one.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.